Okay, so I'm going to show you two techniques to find these fraction values as a decimal. The first technique, we're going to stick with the division because when in doubt, you can always divide it out. So again, we're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So how many times does 2 go into 1? Well, 1 is the smaller value, so I'm going to put a decimal and add a 0. So 2 doesn't go into 1, but 2 can go into 10 5 times perfectly. So if you've ever wondered why 0.5 is equal to 1/2, now you know. So 1/2 is equal to 5/10. So now let's move down and let's do this one. Okay, so 4/5. We're going to divide the top number by the bottom number. How many times does 5 go into 4? We're going to add our decimal. 5 doesn't go into 4, but 5 does go into 40 8 times perfectly. So what this tells me is that 4/5 in its decimal form is 8/10. Now, here's a cool trick. If you have a fraction, like let's say we have 11/20, and you want to figure out what that is as a decimal, one way to do it is you can multiply the denominator and the numerator by something that can turn the value at the bottom, your denominator, into 100. So once I multiply 11 times 5, I get 55 hundredths. Now I'm going to say that again, 55 hundredths, because what I just did is I just said my decimal value, 55 hundredths. Now, this method's a little bit more complicated. My advice always is when in doubt, divide it out. So the division technique is really your best bet. So you may be asking me, well, what if you have something where you don't get a perfect decimal? Oh, are you talking about a repeating decimal? Sweet, let's try that. Okay, 7/9. So I want you to go ahead and set this up on a piece of paper. And I want you to start dividing on your own. So step number 1, you should have your problem set up like this. How many times does 9 go into 7? And the next thing you should do is you should add your decimal and your 0. And you're going to figure out how many times 9 can go into 70. It's not going to fit in perfectly, but what's the closest we can get? Well, the closest we can get is 7. And 9 times 7 is 63. So we get a remainder of 7. So we get 70 again. Okay, so I'm going to put a 7 and I get 63. I get another remainder of 7. When I drop down, I get 70 again. This is your big hint that this fraction is actually going to be written as a repeating decimal. So 7/9 as a fraction is 0.7 repeating as a decimal. Questions?